The Sacred Knowing of Is video series with Tisziji Muñoz, interview number 9. I had some questions for you regarding chapters 77 through 84. From chapter 77, you write, "The universe of nature, being in constant energy flux and change, is that which appears to be doing everything. The perpetual motion, which is the infinite process of natural cyclic change, gives each constantly moving atom or being the illusion of being able to do." My question is, are you saying that we are not doing anything, that it's all just happening?
Yes, we're not doing anything. We are allowed to think we are doing something. That's the grace of what it is that enables us to feel we are accomplishing. We are accomplishing something by its grace alone. That means it's already in place, and we're just part of this huge, let's say, system, this process, see, of life. We call life, yes, it's life. See, we are like a subatomic particle in this event, see? But we're doing our bit. And we're enjoying the goodness of it, and that's the most beautiful part of it, that we can affirm the goodness of what it is. See? In other words, we have gone beyond our struggles to the degree where at one point in this life we were suffering and feeling completely done in by it, and all of a sudden we're at the other end of it where we feel that we can offer something. We can offer something. We are allowed to feel we can offer something. See, as we come back to being the light itself. So yes, we are doing nothing, and we are part of the everything. See? Yes, we are doing everything, and we are part of the nothing. The paradox rules. Mm-hmm.
From chapter 78, you write, "The conscious meaning in a name, word, or with a sound serves to intensify its effect for better or for worse, depending upon the sound and the name and the individual using them. Therefore, the wise and progressing spirits will take no name or sound, subtle or gross, lightly, if it stands in the way of liberation." So, is it wise in most cases to use people's birth names sparingly, whether it be in reference to an individual during a conversation or when actually addressing somebody in person?
Knowing is a name, and yet a name is very powerful and very significant. See? We are all sound by nature, and we are beyond that silence by nature. See? And yet, since we are electromagnetic beings, and we are more or less drawn to and repelled by certain forces, and sound is one such force, name is a force, see? Thought is a force, emotion is a force, see? Idea is a force. See? All these forces can either give us access to their gateways or their blocks. We have to choose for ourselves what will be a gateway or a block. I like to tell the people who come around me that everything that you perceive, everything that arises, everyone that shows up is a step on the path. That means something to get beyond. Every moment is something you pass through. See, as let's say, part of the stream. So we have to keep in mind like we are part of a huge process, an infinite process. So we are that. We are the total. We are, let's say, conscious of it. We are the awareness that is behind it. We are the awareness that pervades it. We are the awareness that permeates every single thing and being, every reality, every level of realization, every dimension ad infinitum. We are the whole thing. We are part of it. And yet we are the particular. We are finite. See, we're enjoying the advantage of being, let's say, a member of the infiniteness from the finite. It's a paradox. And so, again, the paradox rules here. Yeah.
From chapter 78, you go on to write, "Names in the world given by the worldly minded are given as extensions of ego, selfishness, possession, and desire, and are seldom given in the spirit of wisdom, truth, and freedom. For one who is willing to do anything they can to advance spiritually, would you recommend that they change their name and or cease using their birth name altogether?"
It depends on the karma. See, the birth can mean beautiful things, The birth name can mean very beautiful things, or the birth name can mean tragic things. It's in the case of the Kennedys. See? And so, what's in a name? I mean, history is in a name, so we have to be fair to the facts. See? Fair to the facts. And so, when a name is a gain, use it. When a name is a loss, then you have to know when to give it up. So, changing name means sometimes an step up. Letting go of certain names is definitely an advantage for some people. See? But it can also be, depending on the person, if you know what the power of your name is and what its spirit is, then if you change your name, you can lose power. See? So when we're talking about, let's say, the processes relative to names here, the names that are given to certain practitioners here are given as a thing to step up to. It's not like who you are, but it's what you need to be. See, what you need to step into before you can get beyond yourself completely. So there are names that are given as a progression for individuals, with all due respect to their problems, which may come from, in fact, their family names and their family karma. See, which are not bad, they're part of the progression. But we need to do what we need to do to step up. And sometimes when you look at it materialistically, in terms of culturing, then you get a bachelor's degree. Then you become a bachelor's degree of boom, boom, boom. Or you get a master's degree, even better, see? And then all of a sudden you're a master. And then that name sort of lifts you up more, and it distinguishes you. So it means it liberates you from the darkness that you were born into, and let's say whatever that means in terms of early life karma, and a lack of distinction, let us say, perhaps. And then you go beyond that to the doctorate level, let's say, and you're even more distinguished. I'm not saying this is good for the soul particularly, but you have to get beyond these labels. You have to get beyond the name game to liberate yourself, and that's what we're talking about. How do you use sound and name to get you to a point of progression and then transcension? When you get there, you graduate, but then you have to let go, right? And enter the silence, beyond names and games.
Can someone seek out a spiritual name on their own, or would they?
Everyone has the freedom to do anything they want. When you meet a certain kind of, let's say, guide, the guide will give you a term that you can use to lift yourself out of yourself and get into the interworld. So you're in the midway, but you're no longer subject to the same forces of gravity that you were born into, which is what you want suspension from. So it's not a controlling thing. I mean, names can be given to control you, but in terms of the spiritual, it means names are giving us, let's say, transitional. Progression is part of your progression, not who you are as a limit, because you've already been, let's say, limited by your name, see, and the games of your name, the games of your family, and all the rest of that. So the idea is to start to step up and expand your consciousness into, let's say, zero heart space, to use an example that we're familiar with here. See? So it's your more heartbeat, beyond your name. See? Then it becomes not a name and a label in terms of identifying you by a function or a status, but really you've gone beyond that now. Your heart is open. See? Once your heart is open, you're beyond everything. So your intelligence then is heart-centered intelligence. You know what you need to do to be around peeps, and you know what you need to do to be away from peeps who are no longer part of, let's say, the proper resonance with your reality.
What are your thoughts on organizations such as 3HO that offer a spiritual naming service where an individual, for a small donation and by completing a basic questionnaire, may receive their spiritual name? In your opinion, is this valid?
It could be valid. I mean, everything is valid, relatively speaking. Everything is valid. To what, let's say, advantage, to what achievement becomes the question. That becomes it. Relative to what is the name your gain? See, is it a step to fame? You want to have a name that makes you more famous? And then you use what you need to use to your advantage. The idea is, whatever you're using, you have to get beyond whatever you're using, because whatever you're using is using you. And that implies a certain kind of mechanical bondage that could be useful up to a point, beyond which you want to be free of that. If you really want to sleep well, you want to be free of it. Truly, you want to be liberated from the world and be in the world as an open-hearted, giving spirit.
Would you describe the process of giving or revealing to someone their spiritual name? Is the process different for each individual?
Absolutely. Yes, I mean, I can speak from my experience and my purpose, which is to help people take the next step for themselves. It's never to take a step for me, take a step for yourself. See, so the mastery process is something to help enable other peeps to enter mastery. It's not mastery at the cost of other people's losing mastery over their lives. No, this is mastery in the spirit of giving that to other peeps to further the cause of humanity by having more masters out here than less masters out here. Beyond names and games.
Can or does a spiritual name have to be earned?
Not in this case. No. It doesn't have to be earned in terms of my work. You have to show up with a certain sincerity and I guess a desire to want to help other peeps. A certain built-in humility and compassion already. And then the name shows up like by the fact of your sincerity. It shows up. I dare say then, but not all names are to be given at the same time. And that's part of it. If I meet someone, I see their name already, it comes to me, but they're not ready for that, see, let's say. And if they stay longer, then maybe in time, depending on whether or not it's going to help them, see, then it may be useful to give them that kind of, let's say, advantage. Say, okay, this is what you can focus on for the time being. And to really make a case for this process, so there may be 100 names. So for one name is not all that there is. It may be, but it may not be. See? And the name can be given here or can be given in the spirit world. See? For instance, when I received the name, when I was taken to a place and given the name, Tisziji, as soon as I brought that to my mother and Gracie, my Aunt Gracie, they said, yeah, that's it. They heard it. It's Tisziji. And Gracie agreed, even though it may have taken her a little bit longer to get it, but it was instantaneous. So when the rest of the family, when they heard the name, started to react to it in a certain way, maybe I was, trying to get away with something. I mean, there's all these suspicions because the person changed the name. That was on them. It had nothing to do with the fact, you see, that I was being given another layer and a level of intelligence. These people, these beings who I met with in the higher world said, no, we know you as this. And this is what you have to do as this, because we know you as this. This is what you do. This is what you've done. Now you're doing it, extending it. And as soon as I did agree to that, everything changed. Everything changed as soon as I agreed. See? Everything changed. It's amazing. So it wasn't like something that was without consequence. The sound was like for real, because it came from a place that was real, and it was something that had to do with the destiny of the planet, obviously. And I've affected a lot of peeps with the music. Not many, relative to popular artists, but enough significant peeps in a deep way that would bear this, let's say, a change as part of the reality that is upon the earth right now. It's part of a change. And each one of us is here to make positive changes. How do we access that? How do we get the guidance to be able to do that? Okay. And each one of the great beings that are out here already have their, let's say, their spiritual and magical formulas that they use for themselves. They know what they need to do to keep it going. Okay. To keep the positive, and the right for themselves, and the true, and the real.
From chapter 78, you write, each spirit soul being, an accumulation of former lifetimes, has within itself a faint memory of its former names. These are accessible only when a spirit soul is purified enough. These are not always accessible through mere egoic will or choice motivated by egoic or selfish preference, deception, and vainglory. What would be the purpose for one to have their former names revealed to them?
That's a good question. You can only know when you get there. See? Now, you can't command these things. There's some things we need to command. You have to command the darker and the lower spirits. You have to assert your original positive nature. Your original spiritual nature against these forces if they show up as such. See? That's a test for you. See? And so we're going to be tested by, let's say, certain life experiences to see if what side we're going to, let's say, be on. The left or the right side, the right side or the dark side, or the higher side, or the lower side, or whatever the relatives are involved in your case. See? And so these things cannot be commanded because they have their time. Some things you need to command because it's time for you to command it. That's different. See? But these other things in terms of the revelations that each one is subject to can already have happened, but you didn't pay attention to it. Because you're too busy being whatever you're busy. Being under the influence of whatever you're being under the influence of, or too busy distracted by whoever you choose to be distracted by, and boom, your time came and went, and you wonder why a mishap happens. So what I'm saying is not about fear or negative. You have to listen. You have to stay here listening and be very careful. Not here physically listening, but in your life. Listen to what's being whispered to you in your dreams, carefully. That's guiding you and helping you with your family and offering you real guidance and you can say revelational insight into the nature of who you've been and who you need to be and what you need to be beyond that as well. But you have to pay attention. You have to listen. You have to give the inner life some opportunity to help you to balance out your life in this time.
From chapter 79, you write, if spiritual help is sought from a guide, channel, medium, or healer, it is important to keep in mind that the selection of such a being or agency must be dependent upon the fact that all beings pass on some of their own karma, whether or not that may be considered of relatively positive or negative value. What should one look for when seeking a guide, medium, or healer? Is there some basic criteria that...
Well, you should find somebody that is more attuned to, let's say, your culture to a certain degree. But it's not so that you can't get good guidance from those who are outside of your culture. No. Spirit works in strange ways. That's really the bottom line here. And you have to hope for the best in the meantime in terms of what your karma brings you relative to who you seek advice from. And as you know, sometimes the advice comes unsolicitedly. See, where all of a sudden, people are giving they're giving you their advice, and they mean well. And you have to know what of that you can use and what you can't use. If you're a practicing, progressing spirit, then you'll be able to put exactly that person where they are on the level, or let's say in the field of progression. You know exactly where they place. Say, this person was saying this to me. They meant well, but I see they're at this level. And I accepted it because I was there for it, so I received it. And I didn't respond in a certain way to tell them, oh, I knew better. But I was gracious and I let them say what they had to say, and I said, okay, fine. I took it with a grain of salt, and you push that aside. Say, you know you're beyond that level of awareness, that level of advice or guidance, because you need to know what you need to hear that's going to advance you, more so than what anybody else says. So you need to be in the right resonance with the right guide, and when they tell you that, they will stop you in your tracks. And you'll know you're hearing something you needed to hear. And it's not just like what everybody else is talking about. You know that's word that's coming down for you. Clearly. There's no second thoughts about it. You might not like it, but you know it's coming down for you.
From chapter 80, it's titled, Only Free Love is Love. What is free love? Is it impersonal and void of emotion?
Could be. It could be void of emotion. It could be like the highest kind of feeling, see, of compassion, see, tenderness, heartfulness. Yeah. So it's like the love that cares for a flower or an insect. Yeah. It cares just as much for a little insect, see, or microbial, let's say, a microbe. See, as a being, one would say human being completely, where you feel that much in touch with the life impulse, see, and the reality of, let's say, the being, whatever it might be, and you're part of it, you are one with it, see. That's a higher level of understanding, a higher level of being. Yeah. Higher consciousness, and that's what we're working towards, a higher consciousness. And it doesn't mean you can't walk because you're afraid of crumbling microbes. No, you can walk freely, you know, they absorb themselves into you. Right? So yeah, we're talking about a big heart expanse.